Hello everyone, Reverend619 here, and I hope you're all having a fantastic day. Now, I've been testing some things on the public test server, and I've been going into some Outpost Rush and using some new stuff. And yeah, I've been making some opinions on the changes to life staff, fire staff, melee, and oh my goodness. Some of these buffs don't make sense to me, and some of the nerfs make even less sense to me. But I am once again changing opinions on some things. As you can see, that I am currently testing out using Ice Spike with Ice Storm, the Ice Shower that's been nerfed, and I'm not using Incinerate at the moment. Now, as you know, I've always said that I don't think Burnout's a very good skill, and it's now not even as good as it was before, which is hilarious, which is mostly due to the Void Gauntlet. Now, the Void Gauntlet has a 2-second to 3-second route, which is almost an instant cast, so people can actually stop using Burnout much easier. But you have to worry less about Ice Shower, because obviously they're now on a 30-second cooldown. But you have to worry more about Grey Axe, because now they have roots on everything. Gravity will root you, so you can't jump. Reap will root you, so you can't get away during that. Maelstrom will root you, so you can't get away with that because of the new changes to the gravity perk. Now, let's talk about the way some of these have been changed, and we'll talk about what they've done with the Fire Staff. So, Fireball can no longer crit, which is a big nerf stat. The over 50% mana passive has been nerfed to 5% buff. The bonus ability crit chance from 15% to 10%, which is another nerf. The clear casting got a 5% nerf, but it doesn't actually work, so I don't know why they would nerf a skill that doesn't work, but welcome to AGS balancing. The crit on the Fire Staff chance went down 15%, Rune of Helios dropped from 30% to 25%. They doubled the damage of Flamethrower, basically, but who cares? No one should really be using that. And they've changed Fire of Pillar. They've changed the base damage from 134% to 170%. And you might think this is a buff, but it's kind of not. But at the same time, it is. So when you used to double hit with it, you'd do 268% damage. So you can't double hit now, but the hit is now more consistent, so it's 107%. So it is a pretty, it's about 90% nerf actually. So that's kind of sad. And Singe and Watch It Burn have swapped places, but it's absolutely fine. There is absolutely no issues with that. However, the Ice Gauntlet has been gutted. Ice Shower cooldown increased by 10 seconds. Wind Chill base damage increased by 4%. Bonus crit damage at full stamina reduced by 5%. Ice Storm damage ticks have been slowed down, so you do less damage on Ice Storm. Ultimate Chill nerfed from 35% to 25%. Heavy Freeze roots now have a 5-second cooldown. And Weakening Gust, it now only works on people under 50%. So essentially, every use of the Ice Gauntlet has been heavily nerfed. So as you can see, I'm using Ice Spike. The damage on that seems to be lower. Like you're not doing insane damage like you were before. Like with Ice Storm, then you would get the extra 10% on that, and you'd get an extra 35%. You've lost the 10% when they're over 50% health, and you've lost another 10% on the Ice Storm for that 3 seconds. So I think we might see Ice Gauntlet leaving the meta or having a much smaller use. However, two users, one using the Void Gauntlet and one using the Ice Storm, can actually combo very nicely, but I'll talk more about that when I talk about the Void Gauntlet. So as you can see on this playstyle, I have swapped to Burnout because yeah, you can't tank damage like you used to. Before, if someone came at me, I would put the 10% rend on them, I'd put Ice Storm, and then I would go in Entombed, and then I would be protecting there, and then I'd do the AoE. So that was a really good burst. However, you can no longer do that, so unfortunately, you've been relegated to a utility build rather than a damage build as a mage now. So I've dropped Incinerate, which is the only way you can deal with tower shields. And basically, what you're going to do when you see a tower shield is nothing. You are not going to engage the tower shield. You're going to wait for your allies to engage it, and you're going to be applying roots, slows, and then you'll be putting in AoE damage, and then hoping their damage gets down and taken out by your allies, and your allies break their shield, because you are no longer a DPS as a mage. You are a utility off DPS build support. A lot of people would complain, oh, Firestaff OP, it does 1,000 damage on left click. Yeah, it does 1,000 range damage with a very short range, whereas you're running in with a Great Axe and you're doing about 6k on a single damage rotation. It's not even comparable. They are not in the same class. So yeah, guys, if you were maining mage to be a damage dealer, I highly suggest swapping to the Great Axe and the Warhammer, seeing as they both had significant buffs. If you're looking to play utility and team combat, Mage is still fantastic. Like, do not get me wrong. Mage is still fantastic in team fights. You want a mage in team fights because it adds damage and utility. So you'll probably only have 1 or 2 mages in your group. You don't want more than 1 Ice Gauntlet, so again, their abilities don't stack, but you'll have fire stuff in there. You can actually combo 1 Ice Gauntlet user with a Void Gauntlet user very, very nicely. And yeah, some of the combos that you can do with that are quite nice. But like I said, we'll get a little bit more into that. Ice Spike is doing okay damage. You're doing about 1,000 when you hit someone with it. It's not that big. Like before, you used to be able to do really big burst of it, and you could sometimes get double and triple hits. I've not been able to land any of these additional hits and trying. And for my Ice Storms, obviously the ticks are a little bit slower. Obviously Weakening Gust's not applying, so it's doing quite a bit less. But I'm still finding that I can do okay harassing people at range whilst my melee attacks. So that's not too bad. And obviously if you see a healer low, it's a lot easier to focus them now that they've been nerfed a little bit. So we're seeing some changes in the meta, which kind of good, but also kind of bad, because they have buffed melee by comparison whilst nerfing range that it's kind of silly. But let's talk a little bit more about the Void Gauntlets. Now, the Void Gauntlet, the damage is fairly low, but you can increase it by about 200 per left click by putting in a tier 2 in conversion gem. The tier 5s do up your damage, but not as much. You'll get about 100 more damage off a tier 5, but you'll get about 200 more damage off a tier 2. Now, basically, I've been testing the abilities on this, and the coolest looking ability, the Void Sword, absolutely terrible. I would suggest not using it. The damage is too low, and you just get out-traded by every other melee in the game. You will be doing half the damage of every other melee as you go in. Not worth. However, what is really good, Petrifying Scream is a 2-second to 3-second route, depending on their health, and an interrupt, so it's a very good instant cast. You've got the Decaying Orb, which can do about the same damage as an auto attack, but you can double proc it, so you can shoot an auto attack, proc the orb, and then you can explode the orb, and you'll do about 3k damage, which is actually much higher than you could do it any other way. The AoE ability, I'm not too sure about it. Obviously, it weakens enemies and empowers, so it's very good for area of denial, though it doesn't benefit you as much, but it's very good for team play. So basically, the Void Gauntlet is a very support-heavy weapon. You can be going in and you can AoE root people, which is really nice. You can be doing AoE damage to people, and then you can do area empower and weaken for your allies, at like weakening your enemies and empowering your allies. So it's actually really, really good in the team fight. I was thinking about pairing this with the Ice Gauntlet, because you can actually swap off of the Ice Gauntlet and Storm stays up now, it's a nice little change. So you can drop Storm, then go back to your fire stuff and keep DPSing that way, or you could even use the Void Gauntlet. But because they both have long cooldown abilities, I would say that they're better both paired with the Fire Star. Now, what you can do is if you see an Ice Storm drop to multiple people, you can run in and then you can use your Petrifying Scream to root them for about 3 seconds, so they get forced to stay inside the Ice Storm. So a Void Gauntlet user and an Ice Gauntlet user pair together really well. You could, like I said, I don't think it's the best on the same user using both abilities, because by the time you switch between them, you've sort of missed your opportunity to do much of it. But as you can see in the footage I've got going in the background here, whilst my melee is doing most of the DPS, I'm just in the background here, just doing utility damage. So I am just helping. I'm throwing out some extra AoEs, I'm rooting people, I'm putting area of denial effects in, I'm lowering their damage, I'm increasing my team's damage. So I'm actually just being super, super annoying. I'm in medium dodge because you now get a 10% damage buff, as well as, well, a medium dodge. And I'm in heavy pieces, so I've got almost the same mitigation as someone in full heavy. So it's a really good middle grounds. I still don't think you should go light roll, because obviously you die too quickly, but you do get a slightly bigger damage buff. And heavy, you don't get any damage buffs now. So there's a reason to be medium dodge. So I think my setup of mixed heavy pieces to get medium dodge, definitely the best one. Best bang for your buck by far. But yeah, as I can say, the mage meta has changed now. So you're no longer primary DPS. You're now support DPS. So you're adding utility to the team fights, and you need to be thinking about this, and you're not going to be going in solo to do damage. Before, I used to like to play mage and melee range because I was able to just basically outplay people that way. But now, because you can't, I'd say go to Burnout and be a runaway coward like everyone used to use Burnout for. Like I said, Burnout was always the skill for a mage that didn't know how to position himself and didn't know how to iframe. Now that you're not a primary damage dealer, you can't be trading in melee with these people, so you kind of need burnout, and you need to be playing the runaway mage type, which, as disappointing as it is where they're shifting the meta to, so you've got to learn to deal with it, and you just got to learn to adapt and place that playstyle. And like I said, when it comes to tower shields, you're going to be dropping AoE weakens, empowers for your teammates, and you're going to be having to get your teammates to break their guard, and you're just going to be annoying that guy. Maybe you can get behind him and start dropping some extra flame skills, but you're not going to be able to solo take a tank like you used to be able to on a mage. But as you can see here, against other ranges, you can really outplay them quite nicely. Because of how mobile you are when using the abilities, it's actually a little bit easier to use this than, say, using the bow. The life staff nerfs are actually quite significant, so as long as you keep an eye for them, you can be rooting them to make sure that they get killed, and you can be, if they're knocked out of their healing by their allies, because they've now got a much longer cooldown, it's not active for as long, you can then root them for your allies to help take them out. So you're going to be wanting to be playing a lot smarter. You're not just going to be running in and left clicking like your great X-boys. You're going to be looking for the intelligent plays to try and help pick off people, and, you know, shaving people off the back lines, crippling their melee. Because basically when it comes down to it, if you have 5 melee versus 5 melee and you're putting in a weaken and an empower, your guys are going to win. So, and if you're also adding in roots so they can't move and get to their heals, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Then as long as you're playing around your enemy's roots and stuff, then you can get in, do your damage, be annoying, and then escape. You have to be very careful now because of the way they've changed the gravity perk. Reap and Maelstrom now apply roots, and now gravity, you can't use the jump exploit to escape. You can still use the same on Ice Wall, so you can still jump escape Ice Wall, but you can no longer do that with gravity. So everyone that was using that annoying little jump exploit to get out of gravity won't be able to do that anymore. So that's a very nice buff for them. Overall, I think the Void Gauntlet is a very nice utility weapon that they've added to the game, and it adds a little bit more flavor. It's going to be interesting to see what combo of perks that seems to be the best uses for it, but for being a Fire Staff main, I still think the Orb with the AoE and the Petrifying Scream is pretty good. But if you're playing a healer, you're probably going to be wanting the Petrifying Scream, the Area of Denial, and probably one of the AoE heal abilities. Potentially, you could even not have the Area of Defect Denial ability, because obviously that only scales with DPS. But you could instead go with... yeah, Scream, Orb, and Rapture. Those are the abilities. So Scream to, obviously, to root people. Orb will do a little bit of DPS, but then you can do a Healing Pulse on its way back. And obviously Rapture, you can then obviously heal allies. So there are some very good options for it. And I think you'll start seeing them on life staffs, because life staffs can die now, which is very nice to see. Because before, people were able to go 1v5 with life staff. They were able to go 1v10. A lot of people say that, oh no, that they could never do that. There's no proof. Well, there are loads of people posting clips on Reddit for that now. I'll link some of these threads below rather than just stealing their footage, so you can watch that for yourself. But it was very easy to do in a medium dodge or even a heavy dodge, just to absolutely tank everything. Now, with the healing nerfs, it is possible to take them, and there is some now counterplay options, which is very nice to see, and I feel like this is a change that we need. A lot of the healers are already complaining, saying that, oh, I can't 1v10 now, what's the point of even being a healer if I can't 1v10? Well, that's game balance. Try being a Fire Staff main and getting consistently nerfed to become a support build from main DPS. Now you know how it feels. But having said that, I'm not saying that you should just immediately swap off mage. Like, I would say give the new Void Gauntlet a try. I would say try out the Fire Staff with the Ice Gauntlet nerfs, but you're probably not going to enjoy that playstyle if you were absolutely shredding before, because it is very, very noticeable. But maybe you'll find some interesting combos with the Void Gauntlet, like I said. But overall, changing to make some more roles clearer is kind of interesting for PvP, because before you had Tower Shield, DPS, and the Unkillable Healer. Now, you've got utility builds that are running around that can off DPS. You've got heal builds, and you've got more utility options for those heal builds. You can be using, say, Sword, which can also use the Void Gauntlet for, say, some of the rooting abilities and the weakening and empowering, so they can actually have some utility on them. Or, obviously, they can go the standard before with Sword and Life Staff being unkillable, or they can throw in Warhammer or Great Axe. So there's still a lot of options for them there. But now, DPS King, 100% Great Axe Warhammer. As much as I've always said that Warhammer isn't meta, it's probably pretty close to being it now. Now that they've had a quite considerable damage buff across several abilities, the playstyle for it is actually quite usable. Now that healers can die, it's actually really good to be able to interrupt those healers. Before, you'd be spamming all your Warhammer abilities. It would do nothing to a healer. You could get them all off cleanly, he would still heal through everything. Now they can't. So now the hammer is very, very useful. I'm convinced that the AGS balancers play Great Axe Warhammer. It's the only way they would make the changes that they've made. They've just buffed everything about it, and it's absolutely wild to me. So let's actually look into this, and let's talk about some of the changes that they've done with the Warhammer and the Great Axe. So the first big change is Whirlwind now has grit, so that ability is now usable. Gravity hold has been changed to a 0.25 second root. So the perk Gravity will now allow Gravity, Reap, and Maelstrom to root the enemy, which is pretty big. The distance on Bloodlust has been heavily nerfed from 15 meters down to 1.3 meters, I think is what I read. They've changed a few other little things on it, but overall, it's a really nice buff. Like, just getting those roots makes it even more deadly than it ever was before. Like, that's all they've done. They've allowed it, so they've put grit on one ability, so that ability is now usable. They've nerfed Bloodlust, so maybe you'll be wanting to look into the other ability over on the other side, so you can build up to 30% damage by doing hits. So that's something I'm going to be trying out myself. But they've definitely moved you more to a Maelstrom Reap side, and you're not having to do Gravity as much. And like I said, Gravity now can't be jump exploited to escape the Gravity Well, which is a really nice change. But let's talk about the hammer. Wrecking Ball Fortify buff, duration has been increased to 7 seconds. The damage has been increased by 10%. Mighty Gavel's cooldown has been reduced. Mighty Gavel's damage increased by 10%. And the final hit has been increased by 20%. Armor Breaker Rend upgrade buff by 5%. Armor Breaker does 25% bonus damage to full health enemies instead of 15%. And the exhaustion from the abilities passive now reduces enemy stamina by 20%. Yeah, these are some pretty significant buffs, and because of the healing nerfs, because if we look at the old life staff and talk about what they've changed over there, the Blissful Touch has been decreased by 4%. Orb of Protection, heal over time, nerfed to 6% weapon damage from 7.5. The Beacon Heal of Time, nerfed to 16%. Light's Embrace base heal decreased by 20%. Divine Embrace's base heal decreased by 30%. Splash of Light base heal buffed by 10%. Sacred Ground heal over time nerfed by 4%. Sacred Ground duration reduced by 3 seconds. Sacred Ground Stamina Manager regen nerfed by half. Enchanted Justice passive heal over time is nerfed by 2%. And Light's Embrace connection increased from 1% mana per buff to 2% mana per buff. And Splash of Light's shared recovery is 5% mana restored for people under 50% health. So they did increase the Sacred Ground cast distance by 5 meters, but those nerfs with the buffs on the Warhammer are pretty significant. So you can just be going in, shredding people with the Great Axe, and then you can just be staggering them like crazy with the Warhammer. I've got a feeling that we're going to start seeing 35 Warhammer Great Axes in wars, 5 mages, and then 10 lifestyles. And that's going to be the new meta. I think that the game is going to shift even harder to Warhammer Great Axe, and it is absolutely ridiculous. Hopefully these changes from the public test won't go through onto live, because melee was already king. Like, you run in and you just start smashing people with melee, and you out damage a fire staff like crazy. It wasn't even comparable, like how much more you did. So it's like people would complain that, oh yeah, fire staff does 1k at range. Well, you close in, you do 2 hits, and then you do 2 hits on ability, and you're doing about 5k, whereas a single ability is doing what, 1.2k, or a left click's doing 1k. It's not comparable. You're 5 timesing the damage as melee than you would do on, say, a fire staff. So it's just not worth your while. I would say that if you want to be just primary DPS, you're going to be swapping to Great Axe Warhammer with the abilities to put Weaken on stuff like Maelstrom, with the abilities to put Rend on Shockwave. It's just a much better way to be using it. So basically with the hammer, what you're going to be wanting to be doing is using Shockwave, getting heavy, then using Wrecking Ball, and if people are at range, just slowing them down with Path of Destiny, and then just maining the Great Axe for all your damage. And like I said, I'm going to swap to be trying to use the secondary ultimate on Great Axe to see if we get some more damage. But overall, I don't hate the healing changes. I'm very disappointed in the mage nerfs as someone who plays mage, but at least with the Void Gauntlet, we're going to be changing to more to a utility role. So now people who want to play utility are going to be mage, people who want to play DPS are going to be melee, people who want to play healer are still going to be able to heal just as they've done before, but they're not going to be as godly as they used to be. Dex is still in an odd spot. Musket is still horrible, Spear is still horrible, Rapier is still horrible, Bow can do some damage, but it is quite difficult to consistently do it, and it is very single target. So it's yeah, we're definitely in a new place with the meta. Not too much has changed from before, but yeah, things that were effective are now even more effective, and things that weren't effective are now even less effective. But that's all my thoughts from the public test. Let me know what you think below. And let's hear what you have to say about where you think the meta's been going, what you think about these changes and stuff. And I'm just going to let the end of this clip roll out. And I'll see you all in the next video. So that's it all from me. And yeah, come check me out to see me live on Twitch sometime. Because I'm going to be doing less YouTube videos because they've not been doing too well. So it's going to be mostly just like patch note updates for now and less gameplay. But anyway, bye.